So Atishi is an MLA, and a cabinet minister in the Aam Aadmi Party government in New Delhi. She's got 9 major portfolios. I think we'll stick to education today, and that's what she's most famous for. For those of you who don't know this, Atishi has also been a teacher, an organic farmer. She's lived in rural India for about 8 years, I think, Atishi.
Yes.
And she's also a history topper at St. Stephen's. And on the way has collected 2 masters at Oxford, being awarded the Rhodes Scholarship and the Chevening Scholarship. In her defense, she says she went to Oxford, or she was offered Cambridge after she accepted the Oxford offer, hence she chose the second best.
Twice over.
Twice so. Which means Cambridge should be faster, I think, and offer you before the next time. But most importantly, I think, it doesn't matter which side your politics swing, right, left, or you stick to the center. You can't argue that Atishi is a breath of fresh air in Indian politics, and there's no other better way of introducing her. In terms of what to expect today, it's the role of education in building India's future, and really to unpack that, it boils down to how might we provide quality education to all, and that's some of the things Atishi will talk about in her opening remarks. We'll have a few questions, and then I'll throw the floor open. Over to you, Atishi.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for the enthusiastic applause for the session in the graveyard shift. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the entire team at Judge Business School for organizing this conference and for inviting me. And yes, as Marvin said, it's been will I, won't I, will I, won't I. No, thanks to me, I had confirmed. But we have a special relationship with the government at the center. So today we are talking about India at 100. We stand at India at 75. And this, I think, is a great moment for the country as a whole, and especially for young people who are mostly sitting in the audience here to think about this question. Because primarily the onus of building India at 100, building India at 2047 lies with many of you. And I think that this is a time to think about where we have come so far, why we have come where we have come, and how really we can change things if we want to move forward as far as the country is concerned. I remember when I was in school, which is now many, many years back. And I remember that when we were in school, in social science, economics had been introduced just in those years. Before that, you used to have history, geography, and civics. And I think around the time when I was in school, which is now around 25 years ago, that economics was also introduced as a subject in the social science textbook. And then I remember I think it was probably the opening chapter of the economics textbook in class 9 that talked about countries being divided into 3 categories. There are countries whose economy is developed, there are countries whose economy is developing, and there are countries whose economies are underdeveloped. And India was placed in number 2 category. India was a developing country. It was on the way to being developed. And when I was in school in grade 9, my textbook, if I remember correctly, or if not my textbook, definitely the narrative of the time said that India will definitely be a developed country by 2020. Now 2020 has come and 2020 has gone. And while we are given a lot of media narratives about how India is growing, sometimes it's shining, sometimes it's $1 trillion economy. And we are often told that India's GDP has now crossed the $3.5 trillion mark. We are told that India is the fastest growing G20 economy and many other such pieces of information. But the reality, frankly, is far more worrying and underwhelming than that. And I think that a better indicator, which really tells you about the state of the country, is the Human Development Index. Now, what is the Human Development Index? It is this index that the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, comes out with, I think, every year or every other year, that looks at education, healthcare, employment, malnourishment, the opportunities that women have in any country or any society. And it develops an indicator on which 191 countries, I think, participate. India ranks 132 out of 191. This is India at 75. And I think that a lot of countries, which we regard, especially our neighbors, in comparison to whom we consider ourselves far more developed and far more economically ahead of, are much ahead of us are in these indicators. This includes Bhutan, this includes Sri Lanka, this even includes Bangladesh, which has a higher ranking on the Human Development Index than India does. We are told that India has the largest number of billionaires, growing billionaires. And the number of billionaires grew from 102 to 166 between 2020 and 2022. But there's another figure also that grew from 2020 to 2022, and that is the number of hungry people in the country, those who do not have enough food. And that number in the same period, when the number of billionaires was going up, went from 19 crores to 35 crores. India, if I may tell you, is the second largest producer of food in the world. And yet, it is the country where the largest number of people are malnourished, undernourished, and do not have enough food. So while there is a story out there of a growing India, a shining India, a developing India, there is definitely another story of the reality of the 140 crore people of this country who do not have access to education, to healthcare, to water, to nutrition, to employment. In fact, I was looking at this data before I came to speak here, and 1% of India's, the richest 1%, own 40% of India's wealth. And the bottom 50% of the population put together owns 3% of India's wealth. So while the Indian economy may be growing, while the GDP may be growing, it is very clear that there is a very, very small number of people, the growing number of billionaires that we refer to, who are actually able to take advantage of this growth. And on the other hand, if anyone who reads newspapers from across the country, every few days, I mean, at least once a week, you read this story about Central India. You hear the story about Uttarakhand, about this man who's carried his wife for 65 kilometers just to get her access to basic healthcare. I have a colleague who lives in Karnataka, and his father was hospitalized in a hospital in Bangalore, and he was sitting in the room outside the ICU where all families wait to hear the news of their near and dear ones. And there was this one family from rural Karnataka who was sitting next to them. And the father of the household was inside the ICU. His wife was outside, his daughter and his son-in-law. And the wife and the daughter and the son-in-law were having a discussion as to whether the family should sell their last asset, a small piece of land in the village, to get the father treated or not. And so the mother was saying that I have to do everything possible to save my husband. But the practical daughter and the practical son-in-law were saying that you're probably not going to be able to save him anyway. And despite that, then you will be left with nothing. And I heard that story and I thought, in what kind of country does anyone have to make that choice? In keeping your last and the medical treatment and the life of your husband. And I think this is very much the reality of the country that we live in. The NSS survey last year said that 17% of the population of the country has to make catastrophic expenses for making sure that their family members get treatment. This is a government report that uses the word catastrophic expenses. You look at education. Every year, there is an ASER report that is released, which tells us that 50% children who go to school don't know how to read and write. You have an exodus of families who are taking their children out of government schools and putting them into private schools. And an average family in India is spending 30% of their income in educating their children. The average number for every family is almost 32,000 rupees per annum that is being spent in providing private education to their children. There are 4.8 crore unemployed people in India. That is probably more than the population of many European countries. So India at 75, I think, is a place where we need to be concerned. India at 75 is a place where we need to fundamentally think that what has gone wrong, because obviously there is something fundamentally amiss. Now, if you look at India, there are many countries in the world which lack natural resources, which exist in difficult conditions, and you think, okay, maybe that is the reason able to develop. Now, if you look at India, you look at its history, you look at its civilization, and you think, what is it that India does not have? It has everything. If you look at natural resources, India has more natural resources than many countries of the world put together, right? So it has natural resources, it has fertile land, all things that you need for the country to develop. Number two, people. There's no doubt that Indians are some of the most talented people in the world. You pick up the list of CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, and most of them are Indian. You have people of Indian origin who are now taking political offices across the world. You have Indians who have gone, be it UK, be it Europe, be it United States. You've had Indians who have gone with absolutely nothing and become entrepreneurs, have done extremely well. So what has gone wrong? My hypothesis for you today is that what really has gone wrong in India is the politics of the country. And what is wrong with the politics of this country? One thing that is wrong, and I was discussing with some of you whom I met yesterday evening, is that a lot of people like us, young people like you, educated people like you, all of us in India think that politics is a bad word. You think that politicians, of course, are everyone's favorite pet. Politicians are everyone's favorite pet hate. That everything that is wrong with the world is because of politicians. And what happens is that in India currently, who goes into politics? I don't want to speak about everyone and don't want to make it a very individual specific issue, but it is mostly the dregs of society that go into politics in India. But it is these very people who make all the important decisions related to our lives. What kind of education we have? What kind of healthcare will we have? Are women safe when they step out of their homes? What kind of jobs are we going to have in the country when young people like you finish their education? So what have we done? We have basically left the most important decisions of our lives in the hands of the worst kind of people. And this is the reason why most of us, when we sit over dinner, when we go for a morning walk, after some point, we just say, bhai, is desh ka to kuch nahi ho sakta. Nothing can change. This is a common refrain that all of us hear. Why is politics the way it is? The politics is the way it is because as on today, politicians have no incentives to do something good. What do politicians think? That come elections, we will play the caste card. You just need to have the right combination of who is our voter base, what kind of candidate you have, what kind of population you have. If you have the right caste card, you will win elections. There is another kind of political party which knows it just has to polarize the elections just before it's time to vote, and their religion will be in danger. And that obviously is enough reason for people to go out and vote. A third and much simpler strategy is what has been adopted for years, is the money and liquor card. That before the elections, you distribute money, you distribute liquor, you ask people to come and vote for you. Now, if politicians, and they have been winning elections on each of these formulas, then they think that the only thing you have to do is play the caste card, play the religion card, or gather enough money, and you will win the next election. What is the point of doing work? What is the point of giving a good education system, a good healthcare system, a good public delivery system? And so this is the reason why at 75 years of Indian independence, it actually, I feel, makes no difference which party comes into power, which party goes out of power. You have one prime minister, then a second prime minister, you have one chief minister and a second chief minister. But the lives of ordinary people have not changed in 75 years. And I think this is the reality that all of us need to accept. So how will this politics change? Has this politics changed? Is the fact that someone like me, a politician, mean that something has changed in this country? Is it the fact that now you have a lot of young educated people who are now considering that is politics an option? Has something changed in this country? I think it has changed. And I think that The change in politics has had a very unusual and unlikely protagonist. A man who is 5'5" tall, who is by training an engineer, by profession a bureaucrat, at some point of time said that I want to change how politics is done in this country. Now, you may love Arvind Kejriwal or you may hate Arvind Kejriwal. But the fact is that Arvind Kejriwal and Aam Aadmi Party have changed the politics of this country. And how have they changed the politics of this country? For the first time in India, politics is being done on governance. Politics is being done on delivery. After being elected as chief minister for the second time in 2020, and then after 5 years being in power, then Arvind Kejriwal goes to the people of Delhi and asks them to vote for him. It is, I think, for the first time in India's democratic history that I have heard a politician say, and I'm going to say it in Hindi and then translate it afterwards for those of you who don't understand, कि अगर मैंने 5 साल में काम किया है तो मुझे वोट दो, अगर मैंने काम नहीं किया है तो मुझे वोट मत दो. In English, that translates as, if I have worked in the last 5 years, then vote for me. Otherwise, don't vote for me. And this is something that I don't think Indian politics has actually heard in many, many years. What defines the work that an Arvind Kejriwal or the Aam Aadmi Party government has done? It's actually very simple. And which is what makes me think that maybe a dream of a better India at 100 is not a very complicated dream. I think the answer lies in the name of the political party, Aam Aadmi Party. It's the party of the common man. And I think that just that aim, that we are looking to make the lives of ordinary people better. See, ordinary people don't have very complex wishes, complex desires. What do people want? And this is what governs our own lives and our personal decisions. We want our children to have a good education. We put in all the effort in the world to make sure that our kids have a good future. We want that if our parents fall sick, we should be able to take care of them and afford them the healthcare they need. We want that if I step out of my home, I should feel safe, I should feel secure. I want that my child, when they finish their education, should have a good, safe, secure job. And it really makes me think that it has taken 75 years that we have to reach at this point of time and start talking about a politics that delivers these basic things that every individual wants for their families, that every family wants for their children, for their parents. But this is where we are at India at 75. One of the things, for example, as I mentioned about education, that this is something that families over the years have spent large sums of money. I'm sure many of you who are sitting here today, families have gone out of their way to make sure that their children can have a high quality education. Parents in India sacrifice so much to make sure that their children get good schooling, good education, go to a good college. Many parents might have taken very, very large loans for all of you to make sure that you can come to Cambridge and get a good education. And yet it has taken 75 years for a government to say that education is our first priority. For every family, education of their children is a first priority. And yet in 75 years, you've had not one political party that has said that we are going to transform the education system and give every child, irrespective of the background that they come from, irrespective of their ability to pay, a high quality education. What did we do differently? I think the first thing and the most important thing, because it is not as if governments don't talk about education, about providing access, about improving schooling. I think the first and the most important thing was we put our money where our mouth was. That Aam Aadmi Party became the only government to allocate 25% of its budget to education. It has now been 8 years. And after 8 years, in every budget, education continues to be the largest spend of the Arvind Kejriwal government in Delhi. In fact, I was going through some figures. The next highest spend by any state government on education is actually 14% of their state budget. So this is the difference. And if you look at the national government, it is spending only 2.4% of their budget every year in providing students a high quality education. And this is the reason why families have to do what they do, take the loans that they have to take, make the sacrifices that they have to make because their politicians, their governments are not doing their job and are not spending the money where they have to. Healthcare, for example. Again, all of us go out of our way to make sure we have proper health insurance, so that if anyone falls sick, we have access to the best healthcare. Health has been the second highest spend of the Delhi government now for the last 8 years, with 12% of the budget going into providing high quality healthcare. The next highest state government spend is 6%, and the national government is spending a whopping 0.69%, under 1% of its budget on healthcare. Now, we may have started working over the last few years on improving education, on improving healthcare. In 2015, we started talking about how we are going to make government schools better than private schools. And frankly, most people used to laugh at us. They used to think, bhai, aise thodi hogi politics. One, you're not going to be able to do it. And number two, the naysayers would say, that this is not going to bring you political dividends. And the reason I think that Aam Aadmi Party and the work that the Delhi government has done has been a landmark in Indian politics and Indian democracy, because it has made education into a political issue. And not just has it made it into a political issue, it has made it into a political issue that brings dividends. So when Aam Aadmi Party contests in elections on the education plank, and after a 5-year tenure, Arvind Kejriwal comes back to power with 90% of seats in the Legislative Assembly, then all other governments also then start raising their head and thinking, "Achha, maybe hame bhi school achhe karne chahiye." That is par bhi vote milta hai. And I think this really, then can one change the politics of this country to empower every citizen, to give access to education to every citizen, to give access to healthcare to every citizen? This is going to decide the future direction in which our country goes. See, it is not as if all merit, all talent lies with people who have resources. If you do not give access to education, access to healthcare to every citizen of this country, then you are leaving out a talent pool of 70%, 80%, even up to 90% of the people of this country. And so I will close with my opening remarks with just one thing. I think that at this point of time, the country has two models before it. One model, which the Aam Aadmi Party has been presenting in the last 8 years, is of a party, of politics, of a government that is looking to empower every citizen of the state by providing them access to education and therefore giving them the power then to solve the problems that come before the country. You have a second model, maybe the dominant model in this country, of a party in power in the central government that is looking to disempower every individual and every institution and centralize powers in the hands of one individual. You have a democracy and you have democratically elected governments that are being thrown out of by all kinds of means, the famous buying and selling of MLAs. You have agencies like the CBI, like the ED, putting all opposition leaders in jail. And I think the Aam Aadmi Party faces that more than anyone else. You have the fact that, which is what I was referring to in the earlier discussion, an ordinance that is brought into power, brought in by the central government, that takes away the power of a duly elected government. So now I think when we look at India at 75 and moving towards an India at 100, this is what we need to decide. Do we want a model that empowers every citizen, gives education, gives access to healthcare, give access to basic facilities to every citizen of this country? Or do we want a model that is taking away power, taking away empowerment from everyone? Thank you. Sorry, I guess longer than.
Well, thank you for those opening remarks, Atishi. I want to shift specifically to education.
Yeah.
Quickly summarize in your own words some of the successes, or what's the success of the Delhi model. But then quickly move to part B and part C. So in terms of what next. So if you were to summarize the success of the Delhi education model, what would you say?
So first of all, I would say that I don't think it's a shift. I think politics and education are actually very closely linked to one another. And I think that The reason that our children have not got high quality education in 75 years is because education has not been at the center stage of politics. And I think that bringing education, bringing healthcare to the center stage of what governments have to deliver is really the most important achievement that we have had in the last 8 years. When in 2015 we came into power, Delhi government schools were like all other schools across the country. You enter the school, you can smell the toilet that's 50 meters away. There's no teacher in the classroom. They've probably been sent out by the government for some task. Fans are broken, lights are broken, children don't have desks to sit on. And as data says, kids who are studying in government schools in anywhere in the country, there's a 50% likelihood that they would not be able to even complete their education, even if they do actually enter school. There is a good chance that they will end up as domestic workers. They will end up as mechanics. They will end up as assistants in the neighborhood kirana store. Now, there's no problem with someone being a domestic worker or working as a mechanic or being an assistant in the kirana store. The problem is that when that child has no choice. And the fact is that this is the reality of the India that we live in, that 80% of children who enter school, by the time they are able to leave school and finish education, actually have no choice. So what do I think is the achievement of Delhi government schools? I'll tell you the story of two kids. One is Shubham, who passed out of a Delhi government school last year. His father is a security guard outside an ATM. The whole family stays in a 12 by 12 room. He has 4 brothers. After studying in a Delhi government school for the last 6 years, and because of how the quality of education improved, Shubham had a 165 IIT JEE rank and is now going to IIT Kharagpur to study electrical engineering. This, I feel, is a success that we have achieved. Similarly, another young boy, Prince Kumar, father is a DTC conductor, family of 4, lives in a small house, got TB when he was in class 8, had to drop out of school for a year, could not go back to a private school that refused to take him, got admission in a Delhi government school in class 9. And with the help of a scheme that we have for coaching young kids to prepare for competitive exams, Prince, whose father is a bus conductor, is studied in IIT Bombay and is now working in a startup in Gurgaon, doing some kind of coding that even I don't understand. Right? These are kids who would not have had this opportunity. These are children whose lives and their family's future has been changed and transformed. I mean, we talk about, I have a policy background as well. And we talk about very large-scale programs about how we will remove poverty and what are action plans of governments because of that. I mean, I know it's an oversimplification, but I believe you just need to give every child access to high-quality education. These children with high-quality education will pull their own families out of poverty. Governments will not have to introduce schemes. Government will not have to do things. You need to empower every citizen.
So if part A of your program was about infrastructure, teacher training, where do you see part B? Where are the big improvements? Is the low-hanging fruit all being plucked, or where do you see the big improvements coming in part B, where people will be queuing? Well, essentially, it makes private schools redundant.
No, that really is our dream, and I think that one of the big changes that I do see when in 2015 the Aam Aadmi Party government got elected for the first time, our government was formed in February. And admission season for private school, admission season for all schools is in March and April. And we used to get so many phone calls asking that help us get admission in this private school, help us get admission in that private school, help us get admission in third private school. And now, this is as a great matter of pride, I would say that when we opened out admissions for our schools of specialized excellence, which are schools from grade 9 to 12 with different specializations like STEM, performing and visual arts, humanities, high-end 21st century skills. When we opened out admissions for 4,800 seats, we got 92,000 applications. And we had then the famous sifarish coming in for the fact that ye Delhi Sarkar ka school hai, hame usme admission dilwa do. And I think this really is the shift that we have to make. Delhi has a peculiar challenge. The peculiar challenge that Delhi has is the fact that primary schools come under the municipal corporation and secondary schools from grade 6 onwards come with the Delhi government. Now, those municipal corporation schools have suffered from the same problems that schools across the country have had. So now for us, the real big challenge is that after being elected into the municipal corporation as well, our focus is on transforming the primary schools of the city in the hope that soon people will not be lining up outside private schools for nursery admissions.
So if you're seeing success of schools and education resulting in also electoral success for you in Delhi, what stops other states from copying you? And do you see that happening?
No, I think nothing stops other states. And I think that it has happened in the last few years, that ever since, and I see this shift especially after the 2020 elections. So even from 2015 to 2020, while we were working on schools, while we were talking about the work that we had done, other political parties were watching that is this going to pay electoral dividends? And after 2020, I think something changed fundamentally. That when on the plank of education, Aam Aadmi Party won 62 out of 70 seats, a lot of other political parties got interested in the work that we have been doing. We've almost have a Department of Education Tourism in Delhi government. We have some officers who are just for the purpose of taking people around who come and see our schools. We've had 3 chief ministers of different states who have come to see our schools. But my biggest achievement is the fact that when Aam Aadmi Party contested the Gujarat elections, where BJP had been in power for 27 years, we forced the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and the sitting Gujarat Chief Minister to actually go into a school and get themselves photographed inside schools. They had never visited schools in 27 years. Of course, the school that the Prime Minister visited was actually a fake school inside a porta cabin. But nonetheless, he still had to go in there. He still had to sit in that classroom and launch an education scheme before the Gujarat election started. And I think that really is our success. If all political parties in all parts of the country begin to see education, begin to see healthcare as planks on which they're going to contest elections, then I think India at 100 would be a good place to be in.
That's a good way of ending this Q&A because it ends on a note of optimism. You laid the plank for what ails education, but you've also showed very briefly the Delhi playbook and given us a sense of people wanting to replicate that, seeing there's electoral gains to be made and wanting to replicate in other states. So if AAP itself doesn't go into all of those states, you can have others copying that model. I'll throw open the floor to questions. I expected a lot of hands to go up.
Some water, please.
Thank you so much. I think the work you're doing in Delhi is phenomenal, and I think your elections are proof of that. But just to get a sense, how is are you being able to replicate the model in Punjab as well? Because that's obviously not the easiest state, right? It's a border state. It's not a very rich state. It doesn't have as much influence at the center of the central government. It'll be nice to see how we could replicate that in other states and how we would move forward on that, because the work is phenomenal, and why not get more?
I like the fact that you think we have influence at the center. No, but I think I would have liked to share some of that. Unfortunately, time is always short. But yes, in the last 1 year, education has been a big focus for Punjab. And a lot of people used to say to us, you can do what you do in Delhi or you have a big budget. Punjab is a state where we have inherited a huge fiscal deficit. And yet, despite that, education has emerged as a #1 priority. And within 1 year, the one figure that I can share with you that already shows that things are moving is the fact that there's a 14% increase in enrollment in the entry classes in Punjab government schools. In grades nursery, KG, class 1, which are the entry-level classes, a 14% increase. And in across all grades, 1 lakh more students have taken admission in Punjab government schools this year than in the last many years. And for the first time in a decade, the trend of reducing enrollment in government schools in Punjab has stopped and taken a turn upwards. I actually think that for me, I feel that the Punjab story is in some ways even more interesting than the Delhi story. And the reason that the Punjab story is interesting is because it shows that the Delhi model is not just a flash in the pan, that the Delhi model can be replicated. And as I started by saying, at the heart of it is the fact that transforming education has to do with transforming politics. You transform the politics, education, healthcare, people's lives will 100% get transformed.
Ma'am, I have a very fundamental question to ask, and it's sort of a grudge I think I hold against your party. And it is that you're almost 2 terms in power, and it's always been a men's cabinet. You've also been brought in now when 2 of the ministers are in jail, right? So how, as a woman, have you reconciled with this fact being in the party? Have you brought it up? And I want you to answer this question as a woman and not just like a party worker. So, yeah.
I think that, see, one of the things you need to understand is that I'm not even going to say that there is no political party that is perfect. Aam Aadmi Party, like many other political parties, has many flaws and many shortcomings. You have mentioned one. I can probably tell you 100 more because I'm on the inside and I know what happens on the inside. But at the end of the day, how do you judge a political party, right? You judge a political party by the work that it does. You judge a political party in comparison to what has been done before that. And if you were to see Aam Aadmi Party, I think that frankly, someone like me had never thought about getting into politics. The fact that I am a politician is a miracle. Like, I come from a middle-class family. My family has no savings, no wealth. I have no political lineage. I had no intention of coming into politics. And yet today, I am a leader of Aam Aadmi Party. I'm an elected representative. If you look at conventional political parties, forget making me a cabinet minister. There is no political party in this country that would give someone like me a ticket to contest elections. Because by all conventional calculations, I would be a failed candidate because I would fill no equations of caste, of gender, of religion, of this part of the country, of the language that I speak. And yet, Aam Aadmi Party does not just have me, but it has many, many, many more people like me who were never into politics, who don't come from well-off families, whose caste equations, whose community equations, whose linguistic equations have nothing to do with the constituencies from where they have contested elections, from where they have won elections, and some of them not just once, but twice and thrice as well. So I think that you have to look at the trajectory of any political party from where society is starting. No party is going to be perfect. No policy is going to be perfect. No government is going to be perfect. But I think we have to decide when we make a choice about whom we support, whom we vote for, that are they really fulfilling the promises they came out there to make? And I think definitely I would say that about Aam Aadmi Party, that it is trying its best.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Since it's there.
Thank you for the session, ma'am. I am an MPhil candidate and I'm studying education, and my research is with some of the fellows working with Delhi government schools and mainstream government schools school teachers as well. My question to you is that given the administrative workload that government school teachers have, and a consequence of it is that they are not able to be present in classrooms sometimes as well, do you feel it impacts the agency and bandwidth of teachers, from speaking from a very human perspective, to then effectively engage in the teaching and learning processes as much as they would want to, especially with younger children, given they would want more?
100%. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. And in fact, one of the earliest decisions that we took in our Delhi government schools was that apart from, I think there's a couple of things that are mentioned in the Right to Education Act where teachers can be deployed: census, elections, and disaster management. In very early days, we took the decision that teachers would not be sent on any other government tasks. Otherwise, there's this plethora of tasks, from polio drops to Aadhaar card seeding to God, what have you. And the problem with that is not just that it affects the classroom, it gives a message to the teachers that the quality of education and what you do in the classroom is not the priority. The priority is the multitude of other tasks that the governments have. And there are many other things in that message. If you can't provide drinking water, if you cannot provide a blackboard, if you cannot provide a chair for the child to sit on, then how are you expecting that the teacher is going to do a good job? Their attitude is like, "Pehle aap to apna kaam karo, phir hame apna kaam karne ko kaho." I actually think that we need to fundamentally relook at higher education in the country. Because right now you have a very large, I in fact feel that maybe the number of people who are entering higher education can actually be lesser rather than greater. Because you have most people who are entering higher education with the hope that their degrees are going to get them jobs. But the fact of the matter is that most people who are coming out of higher education continue to be unemployed for years. The chowkidar in my colony had 1 BA and 3 MAs in 3 different subjects from some private universities across the country, right? And he is working as a security guard. So there is this promise that higher education is going to provide jobs, which it doesn't. Then people spend years after that. They spend at least 7 to 8 years preparing for government exams, which they don't make it through. And by the time you have a large part of the population that hits the age bracket between 28 and 35, do they actually begin to realize that we need to maybe be self-employed, start our own work, maybe get a small job somewhere? So I think what we really need to do is fundamentally transform what is it that we are teaching in our education system to make students prepared for livelihood, for an economy. And one of the things that we have been trying in our schools is this program called Business Blasters. I don't know if you've heard of it, but if you do get a chance to have a look, where we give kids from class 11 and 12 2,000 rupees seed money. Now, 2,000 rupees seed money may seem very silly. What is anyone going to do out of 2,000 rupees? But kids actually then with that 2,000 rupees get to make groups of up to 10 students and start their own startups with whatever amount of money they have. So if it's a group of 10, you have 20,000 rupees. And so whatever profit they make, they get to keep themselves. Right? And of course, any loss the government absorbs because we don't ask for their initial seed money back. And the kind of ideas that the kids have come up with are amazing. You would think that what are kids going to do with this? They have come up with businesses where they make dark chocolates. They have come up with businesses where they have traditional arts and crafts. They have come up with, there's someone who is manufacturing Bluetooth speakers. There is a group of kids that have used their seed money to make a product called Biothene, which is a substitute for polythenes and can be used for eco-friendly, sustainable packaging. These kids have then gone out there and actually got investments from real-world investors. And before they have finished school, they have set up their own private limited companies. Who is going to stop these kids from ruling the world? Right? There's this one group of kids I mentioned, they were manufacturing Bluetooth speakers. And when an investor asked them, that you are only a group of 6. Why should we invest in you? We don't think you have the capacity to expand your business. And that girl with great confidence said that we are going to hire 6 electrical engineers out of IIT Delhi. This is a girl who's studying in grade 12 in a government school. Now, I don't know whether she will go on to actually you have a Bluetooth manufacturing business or not. But that child has the confidence now that she is not going to be dependent on government jobs for which she is going to prepare for the next 8 years. That child now has the confidence that she is not a job seeker. She is going to be a job creator when she goes out into the economy. And I think that is how fundamentally both school education and higher education needs to change.
Thank you so much. Atishi, can I request you to make one final remark in the context of, we quite often get lots of students coming to us and wanting to go back to India and make a difference. I think some of that is quite parallel to your trajectory. Is there any advice you'd give young students who've had the Cambridge experience wanting to go back and make a difference in India?
I would say definitely do it. I think that there is no other substitute to want to doing something meaningful with your life. I have so many friends. I'm now at the age where all my contemporaries have what you call a midlife crisis. They've all done extremely well. They've earned a lot of money. Now they own multiple houses, multiple cars. And now they tell me that they don't have the motivation to get out of their beds in the morning because they've achieved everything they had to. And I think that life as a politician is not easy. Life as an Aam Aadmi Party politician is definitely not easy. Okay. when Mr. Kejriwal gives speeches in Ramlila Maidan, some of us turn to each other and discuss who's going to be arrested next after this speech, right? So despite all of that scenario, I feel that the kind of impact that I have been able to have because I went back to India, I worked in the social sector, got into politics, is very, very different from what I could have had if I had just continued in a regular job and a regular career. And I think at the end of the day, there is nothing more fulfilling than a sense of purpose. And there is nothing more fulfilling than knowing that you have contributed to the country and the society which has made you what it has.
Thank you, Atishi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for